1. Write the synonyms of the following words. A. Forge, falsify, fabricate, counterfeit, copy. B. Imposter, pretender, deceiver, hoaxer, impersonator. C. Scourge, flog, whip, beat, lash. 2. Write the antonyms of the following words. A. Leisure, labor, work, employment, continuation. B. Comfort, distress, anguish, torment, torture. C. Calm, stormy, agitated, excited, frenzied. 3. Use in a sentence of your own. A. Drain, she could feel the blood drain from her face. B. Spoil, he did not want his children to be spoiled with too many things. C. Forge, difficulties help to forge people into able folk. 1. What is the theme of Song to the Men of England? Shelley drew inspiration from the Peterloo Massacre in 1819 to compose Song to the Men of England. A group of working-class men, women and children who demanded the broadening of the right to vote were attached by the British Army. In this poem, the poet calls upon the ordinary working-class people to come out and revolt against the exploitation by the landlords. Instead of working hard for the welfare of the greedy landlords, the working-class people should try to ensure their own happiness and welfare. 2. Why does the poet say that the workers should not be like a bee? Shelley's Song to the Men of England is a clarion call to the ordinary working-class people of England to stand up against the exploitation perpetrated by the tyrants. The poet wants the rest of England to see the country the way he sees it. The landlords are the usurpers of the people's power. In fact, the rich reap the harvest of the hard labor of the poor. The nation's upper class are stingless drones, who mindlessly exploit the laborers represented as bees. The bee metaphor reduces both the rulers and the ruled to insects or bees. Through the poem, the poet tries to boost the morale of the ordinary working class people of England. 3. Who are the ungrateful drones? Shelley asks the men of England why they are working hard to provide the landlords with all the luxuries of life. He compares the working class people to bees that collect honey which will be used by the drones or landlords. In fact, the rich landlords live by the sweat of the poor laborers and exercise undue power and control over them. The stingless drones, referred to in the poem, represent the bees that do not work. However, the landlords are parasites who depend on the working class people for their existence. Shelley reminds the working class people of England that a revolt against the tyrants has become the need of the hour. It is high time the laborers rose up against the terrible exploitation perpetrated by the rich. The poet addresses the laborers as the bees of England, for it is they who work for the welfare of the society. But the poet points out that all the weapons forged by the poor are used against them by the rich. So the poet exhorts the laborers to exercise their power of discretion. The working class people should learn to distinguish between chalk and cheese. They should learn to protect themselves from the exploitation made by the rich. 5. Why are the lords stingless? In Song to the Men of England, Shelley depicts the landlords as stingless drones. They are stingless because they are incapable of harming the working class people without their support. When compared to the working class people, the rich are, in fact, powerless. The rich are neither creative nor productive. On the other hand, the poor are both creative and productive. The tragedy is inherent in the inability of the poor to recognize their own strengths and merits. Like the elephant that does not realize its own power and the limited power of the mahout, the poor remain submissive to the rich. 1. What does the poet ask the workers to do? Shelley asks the working class people of England to rise up against the exploitation by the landlords. The poem is a call to action to the ordinary workers to stop allowing themselves to be exploited. The laborers should start working for their own benefit and profit. The poem focuses on the conflict between the rich and the poor. The poet wants the laborers to be aware of the difficulties and disadvantages that the revolution creates. But the poet warns the working class people that if they do not throw off the shackles of oppression, they are digging their own graves. It should be kept in mind that the poem was inspired by the Peterloo Massacre in 1819. In brief, Shelley exhorts the workers to rise up and revolt, for they have nothing to lose but chains. 2. What kind of exploitation is happening with workers of England? Shelley lived during the period of the Industrial Revolution, which was a time of change. However, the working class people were needed a great deal. They did most of the work, but received very little in return. In the first 5 stanzas, the poet uses appropriate imagery to illustrate this crucial point. He calls the landlords ungrateful drones. This is an extended metaphor for a male bee that does nothing except mate. But the poet addresses the working class people as bees of England. This is a left-handed compliment to the laborers because they are destined to work non-stop and remain restless until they die. The workers plow the land, but the harvest goes to the rich. The poor workers weave clothes, only to be worn by the tyrants. Again, the laborers forge weapons, chains and scourge, only to be used against them by the rich. The working class people are deprived of leisure, comfort, calm, shelter, food, and love's gentle balm. In brief, the poor are the victims of terrible exploitation by the rich. 1. Why does the poet ask the people to rise up and throw off their chains? Percy Bysshe Shelley is a romantic revolutionary and an iconoclast. He played a decisive role in the democratization of Western Europe. As a supporter of socialism, he formed a theory of nonviolent resistance. In fact, he presented his political ideas in poetic form. Song to the Men of England was inspired by the Peterloo Massacre. In 1819, in the event, a group of working-class men, women and children demanding the right to vote were attacked by the British Army. The theme of the poem is the oppression and suppression faced by the workers in England. The ordinary workers in England plough for the sake of the lords. The landlords, on the other hand, live like ungrateful drones. Without doing anything, they led a life of luxury. The laborers work very hard, but they are deprived of the fruits of their labor. In this context, the poet calls upon the men of England to sow their own seed and to reap their own harvest. They should weave the robes so that they themselves can wear them. Similarly, they should forge arms so that they can use them to protect themselves. Or else, they would be digging their own graves. The poet ironically advises the working class people to shrink to their cellars, holes and cells. That means, he does not spare the workers from their responsibility to fight for their rights. Just as he is angry with the tyrants, he is angry with the men of England too. They willfully allow such blatant injustice to be perpetrated upon them. Here the poet changes from the inquisitive to the suggestive. The poet encourages the people to retain the fruits of their own labor in preparation for fighting back. In fact, the call is for a tax strike whereby the people would keep working only for themselves. The last 2 stanzas of the poem are a warning to the men of England. If they do not change the ways of the society in turn would subject them to slavery permanently. And then, the working class people of England will never experience the joys of liberty, equality, and fraternity. In 1820, composing poems which were politically charged was extremely dangerous. In fact, reformers who wrote for the common people often had to face libel or treason charges. On the other hand, finding innovative ways to reach out to the common people was crucial. For the poet, a change in attitude at the grassroots level was the need of the hour. The poem has apparent revolutionary undertones and overtones. The men of England referred to in the poem represent the proletariat. However, this lyric poem is a revolutionary song which could be set to music. The structure of 4-line stanzas rhyming, AABB, does give the poem a song-like lyric quality. The structure and rhyme scheme are simple and even uneducated people can feel the vibe. Moreover, the bee metaphor used by the poet to qualify the rulers and the ruled is simple but powerful. In the final analysis, the poem is the poet's political and poetic manifesto.